Welcome, gentlemen, to podcast number 5. This one's going to be a good one. It is called The Autopsy of a Bad Repair. And I want to introduce you to our newest team member, Otto.
Awesome.
And he's going to hang out with us. I did put a picture of him up on the wall because that is what we're here to talk about is how did this thing die? How did it end up this way? So to our listeners that are not watching it on YouTube, there's going to be quite a few slides to back up what we're talking about. So we want you to know that we're not making this up. We also want you to know that if you are just listening to this on some other platform, we'll do our best to describe the terminology. I think a lot of the people in the industry will hear it, even if you're behind a imaging desk or if you're on the parts counter. But we also encourage anyone who doesn't quite catch what we're talking about to go back to the podcast on YouTube because it will have photos of everything that we talk about. So let's get into it. What we have is a story of a 2014 Infiniti QX40. I will say that this is a family member's vehicle, and so there are maybe moments in this podcast where it's going to get a little personal because this is somebody I know, but I will make sure that everybody understands when I'm getting, open about this. It's about my passion for the industry. It just happened to be a family member, and therefore it happened to come across my eyes. So this 2014 QX40 was rear-ended, and anyone looking at the pictures on the screen right now, you'll see the rear bumper pushed in. Obviously, there's a reinforcement in there, which was definitely crushed. It was low enough to catch the gate and not necessarily severely buckle the gate, but it definitely buckled the rear body. So it pulled that whole rear gate, inward. Therefore, the rear gate wouldn't open. And if you know an Infiniti QX40, it also has that big, beefy, girthy exhaust. Was another key component that I think even played part in the accident because it's not a light duty exhaust system. So it was also pushed down to the pictures on the right where the bumper is separated from the quarter panel. You'll notice that the rear gate gap is actually pretty decent still. So there was no buckling to the actual quarter panels. There was no closing of the rear door gap to the quarter panels. Again, definitely rear body damage, gate not opening, exhaust crumpled. Pretty straightforward rear end hit. Would you say?
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Textbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, data loss June 26, 2024, and car was delivered on November 28th, 2024. So the duration of this repair 5 months 2 days. Might astonish some people to be like 5 months. Why did it take so long? I'm gonna guess, and you guys can confirm that that's probably at least 2, maybe 3 months of just sitting and either waiting
Definitely.
to get in because there's so many tow-ins or waiting on parts. Could play a big duration on the timeline, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say so.
Okay. Is that the same in BC, Alberta,
Yeah.
Manitoba, the wait time to get tow-ins in right now?
Yeah. It's less than it was, but um, spring of 2024. Yeah, that checks out. 3
Okay.
months to 4 months to wait for repairs to start between
Okay.
parts and tow delays. Yeah, it's
Okay.
very accurate.
Yeah, same thing here in
Excellent.
Manitoba. Par for the course.
Yep,
Yeah.
makes sense.
So, in fairness, knowing that that is a long time, maybe in a whole nother podcast on why that is, but it definitely still was a long time with the owner without
Hmm.
their car, rental included. So, total
Yeah.
cost to repair breakdown: 8,300 in parts, 4,700 in labor, just shy of 1,000 or just over 1,000 in materials. For a grand total of 15,000, and I do believe the rental chalked up to around $5,000 as well. So total repair around 20 grand. Okay.
Got it.
The items on this repair order are blacked out just because this will be going to court, and so we cannot release the information. But we're going to share everything else about it, including what was on the repair bill. So to sum up that in parts, was replaced rear exhaust, lift gate, rear bumper cover assembly. So that's the outer plastic shell, the rear bumper reinforcement assembly, so that's the inner bumper that actually does the job in an impact, and the rear body panel, which the rear gate closes to. And then in labor, we had to replace the lift gate, the rear body panel, some damage to the left and right inner lower quarters, as well as the floor pan had damage to it, which meant there would have been some buckling to the inner rails where the rebar mounts to. There was some full setup and measure and pulling, as well as the mechanical, which was a 0.6 to replace the exhaust assembly, and of course labor. So again,
Lenny, can I ask a
pretty.
question?
Yes, sir.
Is that actually all the parts on the
Uh,
estimate, or is it? Or
One,
did
two,
you just put
three,
the
four,
5 major components?
there was probably some other things like a liftgate emblem,
Okay,
nameplate.
so some small stuff. Okay.
Yeah, uh,
reflectors and
yeah,
Yeah.
liftgate
Okay.
antenna. That's a good one to remember.
Mhm.
A couple other reinforcement pieces. So yes, the main
Okay.
components are what we just highlighted there.
Major
Yeah.
assemblies. Okay.
Yeah, major
Yeah.
assemblies.
All right.
Thanks. Good
Pretty
question.
standard practice
Total
so
around
far,
six,
Lenny. But we'll
yeah,
follow you.
Mm-hmm.
total about 60 hours worth of labor to be done. So I might just back this up a bit and share how this vehicle ended up coming to me. Is this family member reached out at the shop, and they said, I'm having problems picking up my car. First of all, I went outside and the battery was dead. They said they'd come out with a booster pack. They helped me boost the car because it was out in the cold and the snow. While I was looking underneath the car, my wife was walking around the car, found that somebody had unfortunately broken the driver's front door handle trying to get in and scratched the top of the door frame. So, pointing to this vehicle was stored out on a street or outside at some point. Maybe somebody got into their compound. I don't know, but this is on
Man.
the day of delivery. So at that time, he noticed that there were still problems with the exhaust alignment, and he asked me what I should do, what he should do. I said, well, I mean, until you can actually get a chance for us to have a look at it and I can give you my opinion, you're going to have to work with the shop and, ask questions, which he did, take you through the repair, which they did, and, take it for a drive. Do know that if there's anything major that should come again, you're still covered, but you really do need to get back in this vehicle. It's been 5 months. It's going to feel different. Take it for a drive, get comfortable with it, and then we'll have a look at it together. If there's any concerns, we can help you put together a list and get it back to the body shop. And again, even in my days in the trade, that was never uncommon to assure a client that you've been out of your car for 5 months, you've been in a rental car for 5 months. You don't necessarily know all the quirks and shakes of this vehicle and the way it used to feel. So we just really need you to get comfortable. It's going to feel a little uncomfortable at first, and we're here along the way. We're here if you need anything. Give us a call if you have any questions. So, anyways, he did come by with it about a week later with a couple concerns. One, his key fob was operating the gate, but it was not beeping. He said that there was a couple interior things, a little couple stains in that, but nothing major. So we brought it in. Upon the repair, without even opening the gate, I could tell you that everything lined up pretty good. The paint color looked pretty good, being a pro white. They did a good job on paint color match, even bumper to quarter. Overall, the finished work on the outside looks pretty decent. I'll get to the exhaust part, but in the interior is basically now just starting to look inside and see if we can see anything. So this is actually an after picture, but before we pulled any trim out, you can start to see a few things that I think are common oversights. In this case, the roof liner not quite tucked back into the sail panel trim. It's, sometimes an oversight where you're on your back trying to clip this panel in and get that done. But again, definitely a miss in final QC. Nothing abnormal. A bit of staining, into the rear seat, which whether they're before or not, these are just minor things that we would always look for because, again, when you're having a client pick up their car, they don't know what to always look for. So we would do everything we can to make this car as presentable as possible. So at this point, it just kind of felt like, we're just finding some minor things. Lifting the rear compartment trim panel that sits over the spare tire, you start to notice a few other, I guess, common things that we've seen, guys. Missing
Mm-hmm.
clips in this case. both
Yeah.
left and right. These are clips that are kind of a two-part and snap together to hold the trim down tightly. Very common to break when removed, as we know, especially on an older vehicle. And even if not available new, there's plenty of aftermarket options to get clips, but there's a lot of them out there. So making sure,
No real
Yeah.
excuse.
yeah, well, they're out there, right? So
Yeah.
the second thing is there's a felt pad that I think factory put in there to actually just eliminate vibration from the plastic to the metal trim. I'm thinking that's what it was. Obviously, chewed up a little bit, deteriorated. That's fine. But this is where things start to get interesting. Removing the rear spare tire, there's a component laying in the bottom of the tub unplugged. Um, it turned out to be what was called a proximity sensor with the part number on it. And I can't tell you I know exactly the function of it, but clearly not plugged in was not doing its job. That's the picture on the left. And then on the right was another plug taped up, which looks to me like perhaps a factory option that wasn't
Mm-hmm.
used and just tucked along the way. But at the same time, it really makes you start to wonder, like, what's missing here? If that's not plugged in, what else might
Yeah,
be?
no kidding.
Um, and so that's what really started to kind of raise suspicion of, was there a final check done on this vehicle? I'm guessing, I would hope that all lights were tested. I mean, when they picked it up, they said everything was working. There obviously the beep thing. Could that get past the final QC when you push the button to open the gate?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, but upon reassembly, obviously components like this getting oversighted, it makes you wonder what was going on that day.
Mm-hmm.
And then we dig a bit deeper. Pulling back the rear seal that the rear gate closes to on the rear body panel, you see not just undressed welds on the right hand picture, but on the left hand picture, still buckling to the rear body panel. I'm guessing in around the area where a clamp was probably placed and or pulled to straighten, and then definitely where the outer rear body panel was welded to the inner. I might comment that although on the repair bill it just said replace rear body panel assembly, I've seen scenarios where we've just kind of pulled the pieces apart and only did the outer shell.
The
It's in
estimate
my
should have
mind,
reflected it, right?
again, it's always what's best for the car. But definitely, like you just said, Dodd, it should show on the paperwork what you're doing to this vehicle. And let's
Yeah.
just not say for the sake of clarity and by law, but even should this car ever get in an accident again, right? You want to be able to have proper documentation of what you did to restore it back to a collision
Yeah.
capable state. So, um, anytime you guys want to jump in when you see things that are normal or abnormal, please do, because I don't want all of our listeners to
Thanks.
assume
Are
that
you
they're
kidding?
looking at these pictures and going, "Well,
Yeah,
what's
I'm
wrong with
just
that?
sitting here in
What's wrong
shock
with these
here, just
pictures?"
kind of like you kind of I'll give you credit, Lenny. You kind of eased us into it. You're like, ah, a little trim here, a little clip there. Now I'm staring at fully undressed welds on the rear panel. Like what like what's going on here? This is
Oh
Yeah,
wild.
boy. If this doesn't entice you to dig deeper, like that's pretty
yeah,
embarrassing.
yeah.
Okay.
Really
Nice.
starting to point signs that
Well,
something got overlooked. And then the other concern that starts to linger is, what would this thing look like in 5, 10 years from now?
Yeah, absolutely.
oh, I don't think it'd take that long.
I'm I'm
Yeah,
I'm an
right. You're
optimist,
being
and
nice.
I'm
This
in
is
dry
Alberta
Alberta,
roads,
not
right?
not 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 BC. It's not as moist here.
Fair enough. You might buy more time on that,
But
but
you're absolutely right.
holy.
It doesn't take long for bare metal to flash rust fast, right?
Not only that, there's no signs of any weld-through coating being sprayed. Like there's just
Well, maybe on that
nothing.
middle
Like it's
Yeah.
picture,
just
there.
looks
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah.
maybe, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
looking good.
There's some white splatter, which you'll
Okay.
see a little later.
Hmm.
You're
Okay,
right.
all right,
Yeah.
all right.
Hard
So
to
Carry
say. Yeah.
on.
again, as we go along too, I labeled the deficiencies down below. So again, hopefully anyone who's not quite clear on what they're looking at can come back later and see it.
Is that overspray on that rubber that I just saw too?
Yeah. So then we get
Holy.
into the
Okay.
next picture, which is a side view of the rear body pinch weld where the rear gate seal clips over and the rear gate closes to. It's what keeps dust and moisture and water out of your car. Same thing, just another view of the buckling yet to the rear body panel and the undressed welds. I'm not exactly sure what's in that weather strip. I'm guessing it was remaining sealant from before, but sealant not replaced. That goopy, gross stuff that we all get all over our hands when we dismantle
Yeah.
these things. Anyways, further into inspection, just inside the rear body panel. So inside the cavity of it, what you're looking at on the left-hand side is the inner rear body panel welded to the outer. And these are welds from the inside, clearly plug welded, but not, not dressed again.
Wow.
Okay. So before I dig any deeper, I just want to know, guys, what would cause this to happen in your typical shop where the structural was clearly pulled properly because the gate was closing and opening and lining up. The panel was then also clearly pulled into place and the right components welded in because, again, everything operated well. What would allow it to get to the next stage where welds don't get dressed?
Holy.
Like, I'm talking real life shop scenario. What would allow a vehicle to advance once the welding was done, but not get the welds cleaned up or dressed?
Flat rate is usually a indicator of stuff like that. Not always the norm, but flat rate shops do tend to have less checks and balances between technicians. And I'm
Yeah,
not doing what Buddy's doing, and he's done. I'll just carry on where I need to go.
like a hustle to paint is what it looks like. A hustle to paint without any indication that we have undressed. There's just nothing. Yeah. There's a lot of reasons why that could have happened.
Okay.
For sure.
And Joel, I hear you on the flat rate concern. And again, we're just chalking up things we're going to be doing podcasts on. I'm going to guess you're going to strike a nerve by saying that term to some people who do flat rate. You okay, you okay, bud?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just choking on my flat rate thoughts. But anyway, hey, let me just my little piece. Pay does not dictate behavior. That's my little piece on that.
Yeah.
Keep going. No, but when there's no culture.
Where I'm going to go with it, if I could, Joel, is that indeed, are there environments where perhaps personal responsibility isn't as prominent or upheld?
100%.
And flat rate is one of them. But we've seen straight time shops doing the same thing. It raises a good question that if how you are compensating your people, I mean, what if there wasn't enough time on this job? Would somebody then choose to not do the full proper repair? Okay.
Yeah, like the technician got paid. If it, in a flat rate environment, the technician got paid to replace that entire body panel. However, he's only put half of it in.
Yeah. And so again,
like there's a lot of things at play there. There could be a lot of driving factors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll definitely keep in mind the fact that who we have working on it. And again, I will stress after looking at this car and putting this report together, and you guys know me, I'm not one to blame people. I blame systems. I blame process. We just did a podcast on It's So Hard to Find Good People. I'm sure there was good people. I'm certain there was good people working on this car. I don't want to make the podcast about people being bad. This is a system fail. And so when we look at welds being done, properly, I mean, there's one questionable one in there already staring at me like a mole, but the fact is that the car did come out, in the shape to take another collision. I will confirm that. It's just those final finishing steps, right? My gut would tell me that there was a sense of rush or no check in place before it advanced to say, is this thing ready for the next stage?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Again, very limited in what I can see from these pictures, but I haven't seen. To your point, there is that one weld, but it doesn't look like there's a flat out improper repair. It's just not finished. It just 5 o'clock came or somebody rang the bell and it was time to put your tools down and put the vehicle together. Like this is like Master Chef. Like you have to stop halfway through baking your cake, and this is what you get. Like
Yeah.
that's to me what it looks like.
Yeah. And again, that's all put on the premise and hope that people working on this car did care, because I think again to some environments we have seen in the past, and I'm talking years and years of it. We've also seen the environments where there are people that don't care. Again, if anyone's curious on what we mean by that, listen to the last two podcasts. There are still people out there that don't care. And I've had a few other industry professionals that I've talked to about this. They're like, it's true. There are people out there that don't give two rips about what's going on. They're just going to do the job and they just want to be paid.
Yep.
That said, I still am on the premise of what environment are they working in that would create that, as you guys know. Okay.
Or create. Yep. Like there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. And I'll finish by what I was saying earlier, Joel, on flat rate is indeed flat rate was created to be a good thing. At the same time, we've seen it abused on both sides, if you will, of the car repair, both by the shop and by the technician. So, absolutely good point. So, if you haven't noticed, the floor, which is just ahead of the rear body panel, basically what's happened here is that they've done a pull to the rear structure of the vehicle. I'm going to say by what I saw on this repair, the left rail a little bit more than the right, but probably a simultaneous pull and hammering the floor to get everything to straighten out. Typical in repairing a vehicle. Doesn't mean the floor is compromised. I mean, in this case, it was probably the rail that might have been the only questionable thing, but the rear body panel, probably being pulled and then cut away and then a final pull to the rear rail and floor was done. So the hammer marks would be proof of that. Unfortunately, right along the seam to the floor and the rear body panel, still again remaining damage. Whether structural or to get things into place, or more so just final finishing. And then unfortunately also the wiring harness where you see it run through the floor with a kind of a half chewed up grommet. So nothing really protecting the wiring from getting cut up by the opening of the floor. And then the third thing you see, three or four things. The third thing is the sound deadening pads. And that's this next picture from the top view.
Oh, yeah.
These are those pads put in the back of a vehicle to keep the sound, keep the thing from sounding like a grain bin or a tin can. And quite often do get hardened, dry out, probably broke apart when in the collision. So they removed all the broken pieces. Did all the hammering and straightening, more so to the left as you see than the right. But what do you normally do with a rear sound deadening pad after it's been broken away, chipped away, removed?
Like you mean replace it?
Yeah.
Like you might do.
Yeah, but these aren't factory parts you can get. We all know that. These are these are one-time use out of the factory items.
Yeah.
What do you do in this case?
No, there's comparable products out there that are meant to replace some of these. They might not have the exact fit and finish, but they will be very, very close, whether it's a spray-on solution or the mats that you can cut to size. Like this could have easily been trimmed and fit.
Yeah, like you would have been able to tell unless somebody went to unbelievable lengths to hide it. You would have been able to tell that it was repaired, but it would have sort of displayed some kind of quality.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, this is like intentionally been replaced. It didn't need to look like that.
Yeah. Again, just unfinished.
Huh.
So just cutting clean, putting in an aftermarket pad, heat gunning it down flat.
Sure. Heat gun it down flat, spray some texture on it if you need to, some paint.
Okay.
Like there's a lot of things you could have done to make that
right. And one thing to be super clear on as we're going over this, we're assuming a lot of things too. We're assuming that someone read the OEM repair procedures. We didn't say it, but I mean, I would review the procedure for the replacement of this panel. And if the OEM said to use sound deadening pad B, then we'd use sound deadening pad B. But
being a 2014, it may not have even had repair procedures
Yeah,
available.
you might be right.
Like this is like that's a 10-year-old vehicle. So OEM procedures are a young
Yeah,
thing in our
relatively
industry.
speaking, yeah.
So right. So, but from an industry does anything about that? Like from an industry best practice, does anybody even talk about sound deadening? Like, right? Is that even a thing?
Other than on door skins where you see it often come up, but
Yeah, and most of the time they're laying down inside the middle of the door because the heat from the sun has released the glue, and they're just laying in the bottom anyways, right? So it's like, yeah, this is not top of mind for a collision repair technician, to be
No,
honest.
Okay. Is it
It's not.
that conversation has.
is it top of mind? Sorry, Norm. Is it top of mind for us as shops to be doing this though?
Oh well, I think it should be.
Well, if you
It,
don't mind, are each of you guys aware of this
yeah,
happening to a car and what you guys are doing to make
yeah,
it
you
back
bet.
to
Yeah,
maybe
you
not
bet we are.
pre-accident pre-accident condition, but
As close
to
as you
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
yeah.
The example I
Yeah.
was.
How many of you have seen a car roll into your shop with evidence of prior repairs just like this? Or how many of you have actually even just seen something trying to leave your shop with evidence? Like all of us have been in the game for a bit. How many of you have like just experienced like, whoa, how did that get here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Norm, you were going to
and
jump
in
in?
all honesty, removing that stuff, not the funnest job in the world.
Oh no, it's an
No.
awful job.
It's a
Right.
gross, terrible job. And does that factor into the fact that the willingness to do it the right way
Yep.
is
Yep.
less likely to happen?
Can you get paid
You
for it
said,
though?
you said, yeah, well, yes and no. You're gonna have to.
In all
Yes
fairness, if
and
we had
no.
a picture of us needing to remove sound deadening pad and replace it, again, none of which was on the repair bill.
Yep.
And I
Oh
can tell you,
man,
if I did even a rough tally, there's about $2,100 worth of stuff left off the bill that could have been charged for.
it was
Hmm.
obvious. Yeah.
Right? Could you get paid for it if you
Well,
took a
you
proper
can't.
photo and proper
You
description of what you're doing?
With a
that's like
proper
a
repair plan at the beginning, for sure.
yeah, and I think that you can't get paid if you don't ask. So that's a thing. Like you're not gonna get paid if you don't ask.
Yep.
So there's technician maybe would have done it if it was on the sheet,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't
Yep.
know. I don't
Yeah.
know. There's a lot going
Norm, you were
on
going to
there.
jump in
Well, there's a couple of things that I have an issue with. They're not getting paid for it. We've had that conversation a long time ago here, and the determining factor of whether or not vehicles leave our shop properly repaired or not is not whether or not we got paid for a specific operation. Vehicle
No,
comes
I
in,
agreed.
it gets repaired properly. That other stuff that needs to get sorted out through different avenues, because to stop mid repair and say, well, I'm not getting paid for that, and just not do it, it's
Oh,
unacceptable. The second thing I was going to bring up, back to the sound deadening stuff, this is 100% one of those little things that flies under the radar. And there's new methods of application from the OEM, different styles, different finishes, all these things. And I think that it's important to have that culture where you, when you run across these things, you talk about it. One of the things that my shop manager implemented a while back was, at our morning meeting, is, what did you learn yesterday? And that's specifically where technicians talk about things that they've run into that they've never run into before. And I remember the one morning, one of the young lads was talking about working with one of my journeymen, saying they took a roof skin off, and he said, yeah, there was all this stuff on the inside of the roof skin. It looked like ramen noodles. And then my journeyman tech said, actually, yeah, that's a good point. That's sound deadening, but I'd never seen this style before. So I saved a chunk of it. Do you think we can talk to our 3M rep and see how to duplicate this? And it was like, yeah, absolutely. But you need to have people that care enough to bring it up. You need to have a culture where it's good to talk about it, and then you need to have that want from people to genuinely do the right thing, because there's about a million other products that don't quite look the same, that don't quite do the same thing, that could be used in that place.
And what I heard you say there, Norm, is you do believe the vendors are still there are vendors out there willing to work with you on aftermarket
Oh
solutions
yeah,
to this.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
in our
good.
experience.
Some of these questions I might be asking seem loaded, but again, guys, I've been out since 2016, so I think for the sake of the podcast and really making sure that everyone listening, whether in the industry or just for curiosity's sake, wants to know what a autopsy of a bad repair looks like. These are important questions because
How many how
it's
many
too
listeners are going out to look in their trunk?
right. Well, yeah. Might I say, if that's the case, and we'll bring it to sup later, is seek some professional assistance before you start pulling trim panels.
Yeah, please.
In this case, though, is that a great point, Norm? Would the car have left your facility looking like this if you saw it?
Was that a real question, or was that?
If
It's
you
a real
saw it,
question.
No,
yeah,
no,
yeah. Okay.
obviously not.
So, if you, is it possible times where this isn't being seen, that this is getting, like you said, even under the radar inside
Oh,
aero
yeah.
shop?
Yeah, sorry, I see
Is
where
there
you're
times where
coming
this
from.
car?
Yeah, totally. And but again, back to your earlier question, what system would, I guess, induce these results? That's the
Yeah.
question that's in
What?
my mind,
Yeah,
is like, what kind of system drove this
yeah,
technician or technicians to to think that this was a good repair?
yeah, yeah. And I'll chime in right there that I really hope any technicians listening, please give us your comments, guys.
Yeah,
We
I'd
have
love to.
literally got many a years out on the floor working with you to technicians ourselves, but those out there that are trying to slug it out and make a good living and go home happy and still having to deal with some other crazy stuff in the industry. But please share if that's indeed a possibility. Um, so, I'm going to actually switch gears a bit for you guys and now let you look at the photos, let you know what you're looking at, and then you tell me, because I've looked at this vehicle and I've looked at the slideshow so many times. I've had to take both insurance as well as client through these types of things. Um, Here's the next one. So this is under the car, looking up, both on the right and left rear inner rail reinforcements. It's where the floor meets the rear body panel. And this is a picture of the seam sealing work.
You know what that reminds me of? When I asked my kids to clean the kitchen, and then I come in and I look, and they said, "Yeah, I did it all." I'm like, "Well, yeah, you wiped the counter, but is it actually clean?"
Yeah, that
Yeah.
smear of
No, it's
mayo on
not.
the that smear of mayo on the
Yeah,
side of the fridge, or the
yeah, exactly. And here they seam sealed it. They
mm-hmm.
they did it,
Yeah.
but it ain't
No,
seam sealed.
clearly not.
Okay. Just for the sake of listeners and those watching that don't know, what is the purpose of seam sealer?
To seal seams.
Yeah, right.
Keep
Like
to seal seams from humidity and air and
Right,
noise
dirt
and
and all the stuff. Exhaust fumes.
right,
Couple things there you gotta
yeah,
watch for. Yep.
yeah. Like a vapor barrier inside of a house wall, it's meant to
Yeah.
block out things. What happens if there's holes in it?
then mold
It
usually happens.
is the
Right.
exact opposite. What does it do, right? Yeah.
So
It
instead of the
holds.
job of keeping stuff out, it'll start keeping stuff in.
Yeah.
It'll
Yuck.
track stuff in and keep it in.
Yeah. So what's going to happen to this car in, I guess, Todd's case, 3 or less years?
Yeah, it depends.
What's going to happen?
It's not gonna. It's gonna. The trunk's gonna be full of water, and it's gonna be full of corrosion.
Okay. Is there going to be a point
Crazy.
at which, and let's be serious, that this car would someday no longer uphold in a collision?
No doubt in my mind.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
and looking at these pictures.
And what I love about it,
And really, wait, hang
sorry,
on. I think
go
you're.
ahead, Norm. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Norm.
Norm, go ahead first, and then
I
I
was
got
just
something to
kind of
chime in on.
observing. There's a couple of things that jump out here. I wonder what this product looked like when it was first applied, because depending on the products that you're using, I've seen a lot of them where they, once they start to dry, they do shrink back quite a bit. And I wonder if this done in a rush actually looked okay at the time of application. And and pulled away after. I'm not
as it
making an
dried.
excuse for it. I
Yeah.
mean, you got to understand what your products are going to do when they go on. And certainly I would hope that they would have had time to see the dried seam sealer before the car drove away. But again, the reason I bring it up is training, right? Back to your suppliers, are your suppliers coming in, running you through some training, showing you how to use the product, showing you some of the things to look out for. Because I think that might be part of it here. A little bit of both, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's totally
And so,
possible.
again, great perspective, Norm. I'm just going to ask you guys, in your professional opinion, do you think this is a picture of seam sealer being applied properly and then shrinking?
Professional
Yeah.
opinion?
Yeah.
No.
It's a no for me.
Yeah, shrinkage
There's
did
way
not
too
come
many
across my
big
mind when I
gaps.
saw this.
No.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. However, I love that he's given him a benefit
I'm
of the
kind of
doubt because
trying, I guess.
I think we have seen it. I think it's fair to give him a
Okay,
benefit of
no
the doubt,
problem.
whoever it was that did it.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
no problem. And not terribly hard to
No.
correct either,
No,
right?
very easy
Just
to
another
correct.
stab at it, get underneath there, clean it up. This is where I guess I get a little fussier, and maybe if not everyone knows what they're looking
Sorry,
at.
guys.
The two pointy bolts there are your typical, probably 13 mil auto body bolts.
Work cabinet bolts.
One stripped, one not, or cross-threaded. They're definitely some standard non-automotive grade 8 bolts holding the exhaust mount in place. Definitely plenty strong, and I guess it's doing the job. And then perhaps just the undercoating, which is missing some sort of attempt to protect the rusted flaking metal. It was rusting before. I get it.
Yeah.
But this is just like that little fit and finish work, that I'm saying.
Yeah.
But not to take away from what you guys want to comment on. Next is the rear liftgate sensor, which was on the bill, as well as looks to be a wiring repair on the right-hand side. Some of the wires possibly being pulled out in the collision where the rebar was pushed forward and crunched these two things, where a bit of glue repair was applied. So some glue repair. There's a tie strap holding that, and on the left side is a sensor that used to clip to the rear body panel but was broken, and that is indeed the rear liftgate sensor that was put down to replace.
Oh my.
It's okay. Don't hold back. Tell me how you guys really feel. We can edit.
Where's the new sensor?
Don't know. Not on the car.
Yeah. And that wiring, it is highly possible that wiring was damaged in the collision and just totally overlooked, or they couldn't figure out how to fix it, so they just correctly, and they just Jimmy rigged it together. It's awful.
Yeah.
So not a standard repair is what you're saying.
No.
I guess this is where I had a question, and I thought like maybe this is a rhetorical question, but does anybody have any idea what the objective is of what we're doing here? Like when you see something like this, you're like, weren't you being paid to repair the car? Like, what is this? Because this isn't repaired.
No.
It's like cosmetic surgery, sort of, right? We're not, but that's not what we're doing.
To me, this looks like a original missed item. And now it's 3-4 months later. Now we're into it. We can't wait another 3-4 months for parts. We're not getting paid. Just make it work.
Totally, I love it. It's totally, yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard
that's pretty good, Joel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard
that's
that.
D-Day repair, right? Delivery day.
Yeah.
I mean, don't even cut the long tail off the zip tie. Let's go. Let's
Yeah, like just whatever it takes, get it over the door. Send it.
Yep. And on the bottom left, which I didn't mark down, it was the original kind of tweaked up, bent up bracket that holds the rear bumper cover to, I guess, align it. At least
that
in
tab
place.
isn't into the rail very much anymore.
Yeah. At least bolted and used, right?
At least.
Couple other little finicky things that I get. We've been there. These are the rear mudguards to the rear bumper cover. Right side clip missing, left side clip almost on its way out. So whether the
Yeah.
right side was in and fell out, just some fit and finishing. These are the things that I would maybe suspect that you would see on any given final QC, right? Just small attention to detail. It's possible.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Managed to kind of work my way around into the car, and in this case, the fuel vapor canister, which would have been dropped down to assist with the repair, was just loose. It wasn't like unbolted, but it wasn't tightened. But I can tell you by this time now, I'm starting to pick this thing apart because there are
Yeah.
some serious oversights on this, right? So that's why there's a photo of that. And again, just so you know what you're looking at, this is a left inner shield behind the rear tire to the lower quarter panel missing, and then the clips obviously as well, not fully in place. Again, to me, just starting to really pick this thing apart and find like what else could be wrong with this repair. So now we get into the exhaust, and if you remember at the beginning of the podcast, we showed the video or the picture of the rear end of the car where the rear gate, bumper, and exhaust were pushed in. So what this is a typical rear end collision, straight into that beefy exhaust. The entire exhaust system pushed forward,
Yeah.
but in that case now gets shifted down. And in the left photo, it's a little easier to see that it's actually resting on the center crossmember. So the exhaust is still pushed down and on the center crossmember. Tight enough that there was no vibration, just literally like stuck in place. The angle of the exhaust mount, rubber mount, is another one where it's actually supposed to be like this. So this thing is a good probably through 2 inches pushed forward. And then on the other side again, the dual exhaust in a single pipe, and this whole middle area ahead of the catalytic converter, where it's again down and not sitting in its tunnel. So there's a tunnel in the floor of every car where all of these items sit to be flush with the bottom of the vehicle, or be flush. It's actually sitting down probably a good 3 inches.
Isn't it strange that I actually remember the very first vehicle that we repaired that we dealt with this on, 2006 BMW X3, and it had tubular headers and it was bent right to the motor, and it was like one of these one piece at a time. Like back then, like we just had not experienced anything like that. So I remember that feeling of like, what? Like, we just didn't know. It was a long time ago, and it was bent right to the motor.
Do you recall what you did with that to actually get it fixed after all said and done?
Replaced every single piece of it.
Yeah. Okay.
It was just a journey that I remember going on, and we would have known if we had assessed the vehicle in the air and looked more closely. Okay. That's just and it was just like and I just remember you feel red-faced because talking to the owner of the car, it was like, sorry, like we just had no idea what we were dealing with, and this just went way further than we thought, and it just sucked. And so I understand how shops miss it, and I understand why they're like, well, hopefully it's okay.
Okay. So if I heard you correctly, that back then that was a car you had never actually seen before. It was a new model.
And we just had never experienced an exhaust system that had been hit so directly, and like your Infiniti here, and it was just deformed right to the front. And it was just our first time experiencing that particular kind of hit on that particular kind of vehicle.
Is this type of damage new to you guys looking at these photos? Like you've never seen this before now?
No, I've seen it in different ways. It all depends on the type of vehicle as well too. Something like this obviously is a much more solid exhaust system from front to back than, let's say, a Chevrolet Cavalier, where so is the damage going to travel as far in a Cavalier as it will on a higher end car? No, probably not. Okay. But having dealt with a certain vehicle before, definitely helps. That experience lets us know. Just like
Yeah.
we know where to look for invisible damage when we see a rear end,
Yeah.
when
Right.
we haven't seen it before, we don't know where to look, right? And that's, I think, what Todd is saying is like that was a big learning experience for himself and for his staff
Oh, yeah.
to let's look harder when exhausts get hit.
So is it possible then, I'm just curious, for those listening who don't know this industry, is it possible that this shop did indeed not know to look for that damage?
Yeah, it is, and that's kind of the comment I was going to make. We're shifting the conversation towards finding secondary damage, right? Which is not a skill that you're born with. It's not something that you
Right.
just inherit one day. It's something
No,
that you acquire
it's
over
training.
time, right? As to before, we were
Yep.
talking
Yeah.
about flat out, improper repair. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe I have a little more leniency on this stuff where I could understand how it happens. We've all seen it
Right.
happen. But to Todd's
Yep.
point, you
Mhm.
remember those times where you learn those key things
Right.
and you move on. And as years go on,
Yep.
you share that with your team
Yep.
and your experiences, right? And that's what makes you better as
Right.
a technician, as
Yep.
a team, as a company.
Yep. And what I heard you guys say is you potentially didn't have that in your process back then, where proper repair
No.
planning, proper
Yeah.
Yep.
expertise on the car to review it and see it. I mean, all due respect, the family member of this car saw this after the accident, because this is what he looked for when he got underneath the car, because he noticed it wasn't looking right before, and he's not a industry expert.
Mm-hmm.
So he got down on his knees, looked under the car, and saw it not in place. Something. When he called me, he said something doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, anyways, the thing is true. What you say is a proper repair planning procedure involving the right expertise, taking the time in the beginning to really review the damages. But Norm, as you kind of summarized, is it still is possible, and we've all lived it, where the car even may have gotten delivered and we didn't actually see secondary damage where the exhaust was potentially shifted down.
Yep.
Correct? Y'all lived it?
We've all lived
Mm-hmm.
it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, gentlemen, hang on for the ride. Uh, this is the rear shot on the ground looking at the rear exhaust on the repair.
How did they
On
make that muffler so rusty in such a short period of time?
Well, it's yeah. As you're alluding to, is that they had down on the repair bill to replace the rear exhaust assembly, which is the $1,300 component, and point 0.6 to replace, which either labor
Okay.
times are not showing fully included, or there's a clamped on option. I guess a point 0.6 muffler should be pretty much bolt on, bolt off.
Yeah.
But indeed, what you're looking at is the original muffler. I mean, I'm not going to guess that they put a used one on, and at least the bill didn't say that. But this is the repair they did to the rear exhaust.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, isn't it
Oh my.
nice?
Tell me what
Those
you're seeing,
racing stripes
gentlemen.
on the exhaust.
I don't know.
I
Tell me
like
what
don't
tell
even
me what you're
know.
seeing.
What about the like what? Yeah, that's fantastic.
Can anyone describe what you think happened here? And this is again probably just even opinion, not fact. But you're all industry professionals, and you're looking at this photo.
Opinion?
The
Yeah, what's your
exhaust came
opinion?
in wrong, and instead of reordering, they just said fix it.
Okay. So I actually called the dealer, and the OEM exhaust, at least per that dealer, is discontinued.
Oh, is it actually? Yeah, that was a fact
The
check
one
you
I
did.
talked to, I didn't dig in deeper. I
Nah,
didn't
but
phone.
you're probably they probably gave you the right information. It's a 10-year-old vehicle. And how often are exhaust systems replaced on modern cars?
So again, even if I'm doing a proper repair plan and I get underneath this thing and I see that the rear muffler, let alone we talked about the center pipe, right? Like
Yep.
we're looking at
Everything.
everything right now.
Yep.
Now it's on a hoist. So was the car put on a hoist in repair planning? Was there a visual inspection done further to the rear body and the exhaust? I don't know. But in this case, it was on a hoist, so we could see it all clear as day. But the fact is, even with a new muffler, and we clicking on it in the estimating system, because sometimes it says discontinued, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So it got into the estimate, assuming that it showed available. Perhaps we then went to process the parts order and the dealer indeed said, no, we can't get it. Yet another challenging thing about our lives in the collision industry is we don't always know whether things are available, right?
No.
But this was the end result, guys. Is that a
Wow.
proper repair,
No.
in your opinion? So what we're looking at is the center pipe still down and forward, the factory exhaust still hanging like the original, and two sleeves, I'm going to call them aftermarket, but just two pieces of exhaust pipe used to join the two back together. Why would you do that to the original exhaust? Why would you sleeve the original exhaust?
Like to realign it, you mean? Like just something
Yeah.
like, or just as a reaction to realize that you actually fixed this whole car and you can't get the muffler? And you're like, oh no, what do we do now?
Right.
Or they had already cut it, assuming they were going to get one.
Or
Yeah.
that,
Could have
yeah.
been kinked.
Yeah, true. There's a lot of, again, a
point.
lot of
Could have
ways
been
this could go
kinked right in
wrong.
that spot, right? And yeah, I don't know.
So they knew there was damage to the exhaust because it was a muffler on the sheet there on the repair bill. There was a 0.6 to replace it. No other sublet bill, which again, whether they did this in house or farmed it out, the fact is the car went out with the original exhaust on it. So number one,
Yeah.
not properly repaired, but number two, now we're talking the F word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone want to say it?
Are we allowed to say that on the air?
Fraud? Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's fraud all
Yeah.
day.
Unfortunately,
Yep.
All day.
it sure is.
When
You know, not like the actual act of doing a hokey poke repair above board to save a vehicle that a customer wanted to say. Like, there's a lot of things that could have gone and should have gone differently. But billing for a new muffler and delivering this, yeah, that's fraud.
Yeah,
All day.
and that's why I've been just kind of staring at this picture. There's so many layers. There's so many different scenarios. You know, we talked about it. You know, sometimes you do have to improvise when you cannot get the
You
proper
do.
parts. But there needs
Yes.
to be some sort of consultation with the customer, some sort of walkthrough
Yeah.
as to, hey, here's where we are. Here's what we want to do. What's your thoughts on this? This is your vehicle. This is just but the whole billing for one thing and doing another, like, unacceptable. That is just flat. That's a hard no.
Hard no.
Keyword you brought up there is customer, guys. Who's the customer?
The owner of the vehicle.
There's one more.
Well, the insurance company is a customer.
They're paying the bill.
You get it, yeah. The insurance company, and you also, like, you've defrauded a few people on this one. This is not nice.
Yep.
Gross.
So I got one more piece of latest news on this whole saga, and then we're gonna want to basically just kind of round it up with some final thoughts. Just for the sake of time on this podcast, I look forward to hearing everyone watching this, whether you are in the industry or not, whether you know the terms we used or not. Preferably, if you are in the industry, help us shed some light on what would create this. We are all sharing our experience of times where we've been in this scenario, so we know it. Family member just got a call 2 weeks ago. They're writing the car off.
Really?
Yeah. I don't blame them.
Total loss.
I don't blame
so
them.
all the rate
we did the inspection. He submitted his we did the inspection. He submitted his deficiency list to his broker. It took about a 3.5 week time, and he got a call just 2 weeks ago that they're writing off the car.
And what, the insurance company is going to go after the shop?
Again, I would say just my feeling what they're using this report for, that it's going through some sort of court, but my feeling is it will be just swept under the rug. Obviously, you know what happens when a car is written off. It's less than a few days. Here's a check. Go find a new car. Again, could do a whole other podcast on what kind of experience that was like for the customer who now is without a vehicle, running around trying to find a a replacement vehicle 5 months
Yeah.
after the repair. So without even going
Yeah.
through the coulda, shoulda, woulda of $5,000 a rental and $15,000 a repair, could this have been avoided in the beginning? Whole situation.
Yeah.
But it's
Man,
easier to do it later, Lenny.
it's
You don't have
always easier
time
to
right
do it later,
now.
Lenny.
There's only time later.
Yeah. Hey,
Oh
Lenny,
my
so one
God.
question I have about all this is, because I'm very curious.
Yep.
Okay, so your relative gets the vehicle back. You guys find some of these deficiencies. He goes back to the shop. So what did the shop have to say about this?
He was not prepared to go back and deal with the shop just based on his experience of pickup. That's where I think it was alluded to that this car was not a favorable car to deal with in their shop and that it maybe should have been written off. That was just between him and another staff member, what he heard. But his frustration on the whole broken into the door situation, where, I mean, do or don't you take care of it while it's on your property? Is that or is not your responsibility? That's a whole nother conversation. But after he saw the repair, he just said, I don't want to go back. I have not had a great experience. I had zero updates. I was told all kinds of weird things over the 5 months. I was constantly calling. When they called me the car was ready, it was 2 weeks after I called them and they said, oh, we're going to be another month. They called me on a Friday afternoon saying your car's ready, you need to come get it. And if you don't pick it up today, your rental's cut off. So, I mean, all kinds of wonderful other experiences that happened.
Oh man.
He didn't go back to the shop. He asked me what he should do. I said, to be honest, it's why you have a broker. Just let them handle it. Right? Let them know that should you need to bring the car back to the shop, you'll drop it off. You'll need a rental, and you'll want it fixed. The right time, one time, but you'll work with it. Just let them know you'll work with it. They love their car. They really wanted it done right. They're disappointed, but that's when he got the call that it's a write-off.
So this just went back to the broker. All the concerns were shared with the broker. I'm assuming the broker went back to the shop.
Yep. This exact report was shared with the broker.
Okay.
Yep.
And then,
so I'm going to assume they went back to the shop, or they went to their actual insurance. Insurance reviewed this.
We don't know any of that, right?
No.
We know how the system works. Is that the broker sells you your policy. If you buy your policy from a real person instead of on the internet, they'll stand up for you in a case like this, a rear-end collision. They'll take care of you. You're their customer. The broker is looking in your best interest to make sure that you choose the right insurance for your coverages and your costs. And the broker is absolutely capable of talking with the insurance, including the adjuster, in this case.
Yeah.
The broker can be your representative, right?
It is a little bit different in our province. That's why I'm asking questions about it. It's, in the provincial insurance market, the process of dispute resolution is definitely a bit different. So
for the sake of that topic, if you were a client in BC, or maybe Norm, it's the same in Manitoba, and you did have concerns about your repair, but you weren't happy with, maybe the service you had at the shop, what's the process?
To go back to the insurance company, and then the insurance company will contact the shop and try to work through that.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's different avenues that could, the shop could have the opportunity to rectify the situation if all parties agree to that. It might just go to another shop altogether and then get taken care of over there, and then the bill would go back to the first shop. So it's really hard to say what would have happened there.
Would third parties ever get involved in a case like that in Manitoba or BC? Like, let's say you're disputing the insurance company and the body shop. You ever heard any like Lenny? I would consider like a third party in this type of resolution right here. And I know that's been growing in the States a lot with like collisions, safety consultants, and a few other groups where post-accident inspections are actually kind of becoming its own industry.
Yep.
It's different in BC. We've got, if you disagree with the insurance company's got your back. Like, so if the shop doesn't have your back, they will certainly pay for another shop to fix the deficiencies and bill the shop that they feel is in the wrong. That's 100%.
So, and again, for industry people and those listening, maybe a question lingering is it possible it's hard to get everything you need to fix the car properly, and that you don't necessarily always have, I guess, the ability to put down things that have to be on the repair, and you're disputing with the, let's say, insurance or customer responsible for fixing it? Is that a real thing?
That's a real thing.
Okay. And I'm talking to this degree. I'm not talking like getting paid for a 0.5. I'm talking like we need to repair this vehicle this way, and they're saying no, we're not covering that, or no, we're not giving you what you're asking for.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
Okay, so check this out. This is a shop that the client was told to take it to because it was their DRP. So this is a reputable shop in town. This is no hole in the wall shop. This is known as one of the most reputable shops in town. And it was also a DRP from one of the most reputable insurance companies.
Wild.
That is a little bit hard to believe.
It
What a
really
racket.
isn't. Yeah.
well, thanks, Joel.
I
don't
know
know.
from your
Sounds
perspective
insane.
in BC and Manitoba that seems insane, but DRP does not mean repaired properly.
Is that not the definition of DRP?
Direct
Did not
repair
repair properly?
program.
Didn't
Direct
repair
repair
properly?
program. Yeah.
In a lot
I don't
of
know.
cases,
I got my own definition.
Yeah.
in a lot of cases, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Because to get on a DRP program doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just means that you checked off a few boxes on a checklist that they made. Just like some of our OEM repair programs are becoming now as well
hang
too.
on. Hang on.
There's Elmo.
I'm throwing Elmo into that one. Let's not get into that right now.
Well, but we will definitely touch base down the road on things such as the topic of DRP, because again, like flat rate, they were created one day to be a good thing.
Yeah.
Just like insurance back in whatever, sorry if my history fails me, but early 1900s, 1800s, where they created insurance to help each other out.
Yeah.
None of those were designed to be bad things, but again, what we're asking, and I think Joel, you're alluding to, is the purpose of a DRP not to select a proper shop, which again, this was to be known as one, to do proper repairs, which in this case absolutely was not, right? So, one more thing too, as Norm, you shared that in the process of the owner not wanting to deal with this shop, it would normally be an option then to have a different shop take care of it and work it out that way. In this case, that would probably be my guess, is the insurance looked at the final bill, costs, and the additional who knows what to fix this, whether out of shop's pocket or theirs, and simply said it's not economic. We're gonna write this thing off. Well, when a car is written off, the VIN is tagged as salvage, and the car is simply sent out to auction, whether to be parted out or picked up by somebody who wants to then do a proper repair and have it reinstated as a repaired vehicle. At least that's the way it works in Alberta. I don't know what happens in your guys' province.
A properly repaired auction vehicle, sure. Nice story.
That would be podcast number 12, I think. We got all kinds of content.
Totally. We got a ways to go.
So I just really want to come back to what I asked each of you guys to describe going into a podcast where we're covering a repair. How are you feeling right now? And please just be honest. I think it's important for me to hear, because we're going to keep digging away at some of this stuff real fast, and we're going to continue to get shop owners talking. That was the whole point of Beyond Repair. We invite anyone in the industry as well to talk, but how are you guys feeling now that I shared all of this with you?
Exactly the way I knew I was going to feel. Shitty. Like I've always said, this industry is my life, and I stand up for it any day of the week. I advocate for it. I tell people it's one of the greatest industries to be in. And then when you see something like this, which unfortunately just gives our industry a bad name, bad reputation. And I don't know, some people get joy out of this stuff, and it creates some drama, and I'm sure it'll create a lot of comments. But I'm honestly, I don't know. I'm sick to my stomach. I don't like this shit. Like this is the one that got caught, This isn't the one driving out there.
Yeah.
This isn't the one that your niece is going to get rear-ended in the second time and have, maybe some severe,
Yep.
stuff to live with the rest of her life because it wasn't prepared properly. Like this is
Yep.
real life shit, and I think people
Yep.
need to start understanding that. And I think that's why it grosses me out so much. I think, this.
Well, it's a good point, Norm. It did get out. It was
Right.
delivered,
Yeah,
signed
yeah,
off,
yeah.
and it was simply the owner saying, "Hey, can somebody else have a look at this? Something doesn't feel right." So I would add to that: if you have had your car repaired and something doesn't feel right, don't feel like you're being wrong. You should not be told you're wrong by the shop. I invite you to go back to that shop if there's still a level of trust, because we all do oversight things. So it's not like you can't trust any shop out there. You got to use your gut feel. Are you feeling like you were treated well through the whole repair process? Problems do happen. But in this case, please do speak up, because there are plenty of cars out there that we do know are getting properly repaired. And you can trust that, as Norm, you would hope that most people are fixing cars properly. I don't know if you used the word hope. I heard hope, but
I feel like, and then everybody looked at me weird, so I said, I hope that. I kind of backpedal that meme of like Homer backing into the bushes. I was just backpedaling, but I don't know. Like when I see this, the first thing that jumps in my mind is not, oh yeah, that's a typical repair. Yeah, it's like, no, this is not good. This is bad. This jumps out to me. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I just can't believe we're here looking at that. I don't know. I'm like horrified by it, but I actually Norm hopes that things are, that this isn't normal, but I actually fear it is. I feel like there's a healthy bit of evidence out there in the world that points to this being actually normal. And you talk to, just pick some random person off the street, just grab them and say, hey, like, if you ever had a car fixed anywhere, anytime you had a family member that's had a car fixed, what do they say? They always say the same thing. I ended up trading it in, I ended up selling it off, it was never the same. I wonder why. And I just think like that's a tragedy, because it doesn't actually need to be that way.
No, it doesn't.
Cars aren't the same because things are overlooked, and they're missed, they're overlooked, they're not repaired correctly, and that's what we're dealing with.
Yep. Jojo?
Well, I kind of look at Norm trying to be all positive, because that's the type of person that he is. And I see a lot of that in myself as well, too. However, I'm more on Todd's page here, where I believe this is more normal than what we see. And the fact that the insurance company is just writing this off to make it go away is also taking away from the fact that this is going to see a lot less light in the media and for people to actually be aware of. So that bothers me. This should not just be pushed aside, but we got the John Eagle case there in the States that blew this up how many years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Honda Fit with the roof skin, right?
Yeah, and now here we are. We got our own little Canadian version of it, but it's just getting pushed under the rug again. And we've had this great conversation here, and yet I don't think any of us have talked about the actual solution to the problem. And it's going to continue to be a whole bunch of finger pointing between insurance and industry and owners and technicians as to what is the solution. And I think we all know what it is. And it's just to repair the vehicle to OEM standards. That's it.
Well, quoting our good friend Mr. Bruno, was maybe it needs to get a little worse before it gets better. And what I'm excited to segue into that is that's why we're having this podcast.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about it. We've all lived it. We've all had to fix somebody else's stuff too. We're not denying any of that. For me, the frustration is of all the years that we worked so hard to build systems to not let that happen, and now we're still seeing it happen. Yeah, for those who are truly going against the current to build reputable shops, and this would include businesses that are employing good people that are still struggling. There is hope to be better, but yes, unfortunately, those guys down the street to you who's working so hard to be more effective, more efficient, and tell a customer it's possible to fix a car properly, some of your competition is not. So I can say that openly on this podcast because I've been to each of your shops, and you guys do have systems in place that would catch that rear body panel after weld, but before paint, after paint, but before reassembly, and definitely through QC to make sure that everything the bill matched everything we did. That is going back 20, 30 years, and there is no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse that your repair bill doesn't match your repair, that you don't have QC things in place, and I'm going to say it, that you aren't doing proper repair plans at the beginning. So if none of those are happening, get on here, reach out, ping me, ping Todd, Joel, Norm. We will not share your name. In fact, we'll show up at your shop and hug you and help you any way we can, but we got to stop doing this to the industry. This is a shop fail, a system fail, and guess what? Dare I say, this is a company employing those good people we're so having such time finding.
Yeah.
So if you're not putting proper repairs out, either fix it or shut the doors.
Yeah.
Get out, because there are other people out there that are coming after you, and they're going to do it right. That's my passionate response, because
love that.
I'm going to tell you what, this is not a threat. This is a reality. We are fixing people's cars just like grocery stores are selling groceries. The recent big one is, do you feel safe flying on an airplane? I still do, but clearly there's some standards slipping. If you haven't watched the news lately, so hey, wake up. It just happens to be that in this case, no one truly got hurt from this repair yet, and it got caught. So let's keep going. So, Joe, you had called a bit of action, I think. How do we help people who have just seen that and going, uh-oh? Yes, if your car is needing repair and repair has been repaired and you have questions, talk to your shop. It has to feel okay. You have to feel comfortable talking to your repair facility. You also have your insurance company to talk to and say, look, I saw this horrible podcast. I don't know what to do. You can reach out to us too. Put it in comments. Second, we will do a podcast on what to do if you're in an accident. How about that? What to look for in a shop, what questions to ask, what to look for when you're done, and what are your rights as a customer. And I'm hoping anyone in the industry that watching this will comment and say, hey guys, drama or not, this is how I'm feeling. Let's talk about it, because we're here to talk. Let's get on. Let's get going.
Yeah. Lenny, there is something that I have to say that I wouldn't feel right without saying it. At the end of the day, though, I still don't like that some technician put their name to this. And I get that there's systems that fails, and I get that there's other factors, but we were all repair technicians at one point. How could you fix this vehicle or not fix this vehicle and stand next to it and look and say, that's what I did. That's my work right there. And that's all exactly. That's always been my test. And that's what I tell my techs, because everybody's had a technician come up to you and say, like, hey boss, come look at this. Like, is this good enough, or what do you think about this? And my answer is always the same. Would you stand in a room full of your peers and coworkers in your industry and say, this is the repair I completed. I'm proud of it. I stand by it. Someone did that. Someone put their tools away after they did this. Someone went home and they slept. They went to bed. That's crap. That's garbage. Like,
thanks, Norman.
Calling out technicians here.
Well, Todd, we showed this to your team at your boot camp, and a lot of shock in the room, but a reality that we face challenges, and that came from Todd and leadership. Is if you see this happening in our shop, refuse to advance it. Stop the repair.
Absolutely.
Do not advance it. Don't. You're not expected to put stuff out like this. In fact, as you're alluding to, Norm, we expect the opposite.
We expect the opposite, and if there's anything going on that's violating your personal code of ethics, or you're seeing your neighbor doing something that you're like, whoa,
Yep.
like wave. You
Yep.
can wave the flag quietly, like just you don't need to stand up in front of everybody, but wave the flag just sort of quietly, and it's like because this is just not what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like this is just not it. So yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So good, gentlemen. One's been in the ranks for a bit. It was a pleasure to do that one with you. And again, I know that each one of you are open to anyone reaching out. But of course, you can also know that we'll put our email on the end of this, so that if somebody wants to reach out in confidence and without naming names, talk to us, we can. With that, I'll call it a wrap, and just want to say again, thanks for your guys' opinion, perspective, experience, and of course, willingness to be on this podcast.
It's been a slice.
Thanks, Lenny.